Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast, the podcast designed to challenge you to break the mold that average has on the world. Each episode offers insights directly from those who choose to break average every day. Now for the latest insights, here are your hosts, Paul Gustafson and Barry Smith.
Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast. I'm Paul Gustafson, and joining me today, I'm so excited, is Barry Smith. Hey, Barry. How you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome, Paul. How about you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for joining me for season 5 of the Breaking Average podcast. And I know you've been a watcher and a listener and a fan, but really you're a friend. And I'm just so thrilled to have you part of this. So thanks for saying yes to co-hosting with me for season 5.
No, this is awesome, man. I mean, we go back a decade when I think all the beginning of this started, and it's exciting and a true honor to be jumping back in with you.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. And we got some stories to tell. I think folks are going to have a lot of fun as we go through this season. We've got a really terrific season lined up, too, and I can't wait to get into all the different elements to it. But today, Barry, I wanted to dive in and just have a conversation with you about becoming something more.
Yeah.
So that's going to be our topic, becoming something more. And before we dive into it, but just those 3 words, becoming something more, what kind of conjures up in your mind as you think through that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as you know, I've been working with the Maxwell leadership community for, I think, about 8 years now, kind of helping some of the new people get started, as well as my own coaching client base. And there's a phrase I use all the time that you've got to do something you've never done before to become someone you've never been before. And I love challenging people with that statement because they go, oh, yeah, I never really thought about it that way. But it's true. You know, there's just, it's to me, it's math. I'm a big math numbers guy. It's simple math. You cannot become without doing. One of our mutual mentors, Paul Martinelli, one of my most favorite lessons from him is you've got to take action. You've got to take action to get a result. And without doing that, you don't know what the next step is. You can't become more. So it's that just consistent commitment to taking action, right or wrong. You've got to get that result. And that's the path to becoming more. So love this topic, man.
Yeah. So we're going to have fun. Great. I love that setup too. And you have helped me become something more, and we'll get into some of that too. And I know you've helped a lot of folks too with just kind of mapping out, right? 90-day success roadmap kind of stuff and all that. So we're going to get into all those things. We're going to have fun, guys. So listen, if you're watching or listening, thank you. Thank you for being part of our Breaking Average podcast. And hey, listen, some of you guys know that Rick's not in the co-host seat. We got Barry Smith. Rick is still a great friend, and he's still part of us in a lot of different ways. But Barry and I get to do this together. And we've been doing this for a while, guys. Even before people knew about podcast or even how to spell it, Barry and I were doing some fun things with something called the Platform Builders, and some of you guys may remember that, right? So we've had some fantastic interviews. Mark Miller, Simon Sinek. All right, what are some of the memories that you have of our Platform Builders days? Because those were essentially podcasts, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really all started with Michael Hyatt's book. We took off from there. You're right. Lots of great interviews, lots of great stories on how we got some of those interviews. But I think some of my best memories are the outtake times when you and I were together, and would just go. We should dig some of those up if we've got the guts to do it, and bring them in here, because we just a lot of fun. But you've always been a brother to me, and this is just good stuff, man. We can add value. We can add value together, and I love that.
Yeah, so true. That's great. Well, I'm going to share a quote. So let's kind of build off this quote, right? So usually at this section here, after a little bit of attunement, guys, as you're watching the podcast or listening to it, we share a story or have an interview or have a quote. And today we're just going to have a little bit of a quote, because you're going to hear stories from Barry and I throughout this session, this topic that we're going to talk about. So here we go. The quote, Barry, is simply this. I saw this a while ago and I loved it. A vision is not just a picture of what could be, It's an appeal to our better selves, a call to become something more. Rosabeth Moss Cantor. And I love that, right? So she talks about a vision. It's not just a picture of what could be, it's an appeal, right? So it draws us. And she kind of tees it up when you think about it, right, Barry, in terms of the
Yeah.
importance of vision. And but let's get into this. Why is becoming our better self so important? Why is that important to you and me and everybody else?
I think for me, I look back to my journey, in the Maxwell community, 30 years in construction, and I just, it was a challenging environment. But even within that, even the success I saw in that industry, I still knew there was more that I could do. There was potential out there, untapped potential. At the time, no awareness on how to, achieve it, let alone identify, right? It's like there's something out there. I know I've got the passion, the desire to do something bigger, become greater than myself. And it was really a path of, I guess you could say, discovery and again, awareness, a word I love to use because it's the first step as you've got to identify what's there. And I think everybody inside just knows they're capable of something more. But you got to get yourself an environment conducive to growth, get around people who are maybe a couple steps ahead of you in the process of identifying what that looks like. And then you can start taking some of that action. But I know deep down within everyone, there's that piece of I can do more. I was created to do more than I'm doing. And you've just simply got to get in the type of environment that will help you, one, discover that, and then two, be able to execute on it.
Yeah, it's so true. It reminds me, it's a weird analogy, but I'll share this. I remember when I bought my first house back in 92, 93 timeframe, actually somewhere early 90s. And I was really like wrestling with it. Like, should I really buy a house? And like, wow, this is going to really crimp my wallet, right? And somebody said something to me that like, wait a minute, tell me, 5 years ago, could you have even thought about buying a house? Well, no. Well, what makes you think that 5 years later you're not going to be able to not only afford this house, but maybe choose to go buy a different one? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, think about your growth. You're becoming something more, right? And it's allowing you to buy this house right now, even though you feel like it's going to crimp your wallet. But your salary's changed every year, hasn't it? Yeah. Well, don't you think your salary is going to raise a little bit over the next couple years so that maybe it won't feel so crimped initially? Now, here's the thing, Barry, the house cost me, brace yourself, $93,000. I was sweating over $93,000 for buying a house, right? And the rates were a little bit higher than they are today, but still, I mean, it was $810 a month for the mortgage on that house, right? And yeah, the point being is we get scared of the today, like I'm not capable, I'm not sure I can, I don't know if this is going to be possible. But we have to realize, wait a minute, there's always room for growth.
Yeah.
Where there's room for growth, then there's opportunity for us to do things that we never dreamed of. So I don't know, kind of a strange story, but I want to at least
No,
that's what was kicking out when you were sharing.
I love this story, man. And look, I'll one up you. I
Yeah,
had the same feeling. Price tag on my first house, 59,950.
yeah,
And it's like you're telling that story, and I'm remembering back. It's like where was pre kids, and
yeah,
and here we are now. Next week my kids will be at the youngest 30. So I'm aging myself there a little bit. But you think back about that journey. Everything was a challenge, when we were back at that age. And I don't think it's just in your 20s and maybe even into your 30s. Everything feels like a challenge, and I think that's where we get stuck. Noise and clutter, right? How
yep,
many years have we been talking about noise and clutter? And so again, the key to that becoming more, I think, is finding the mental, the emotional space to be able to do that. And in this day and age, and especially coming out of the pandemic, the political structure we have right now, there's just so much out there. It's tough. It's tough to even say for 1 minute, I'm going to dedicate some time to personal development. I'm going to work on myself.
Yeah.
It's hard, man. Again, it goes back to getting in the right environment. Be around guys like you, that can inspire.
No, well, you inspire me. But I love what you said about getting in the right environment. And it's almost, I mean, we're way too early for tip and challenge, but we're going to be giving tips and challenges throughout our discussions, guys. So just be ready, capture notes if you can. And if you have ideas, share those back with us. We're always listening. But when we get in the right environment, we're growth minded. I was visiting a friend up in Arlington last night, and he's doing really well. And he showed me his workout room, and I was a little jealous, right? I'm not gonna lie, right? I mean, he's got a cool work. I mean, all the free weights. I mean, he's a free weight guy, right? So he's got the big plates and everything, and he says, yeah, I work out 5 days a week. And this guy, I mean, he's strong. And I'm looking at him like, you know what? When 15 years ago, he was a scrawny guy, and here he is now, man. He is strong. And when you get in the right environment and when you focus on that growth, when you dedicate yourself, he says, there's some mornings I just don't want to do this. I just
Yeah,
don't. But I feel like I can conquer the world when I get done with my workouts. I feel like I'm ready for the day.
yeah,
I'm like, wow. And it's paying dividends. So when we're growth minded, and if we're in the right environments, then we can start to see the results. So you want to talk a little bit about results of what happens with being growth minded and
yeah.
pushing yourself in that direction, because you've seen this.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love what John Maxwell says in the 15 Valuable Laws of Growth in the Law of Environment. Go figure, right? But he quotes Charles Tremendous Jones, who said, "Now, bear in mind, this was from decades ago when Tremendous Jones came up with this quote. But he said, you'll be the same in 5 years as you are today, but for the people you spend your time with and the books you read." And I make the point about the timing of that, because I still believe it's the people you hang around with. Now, the books you read, and certainly both you and I are big book guys, but there's a lot of different places we can pull information in this day and age, like maybe the Breaking Average podcast, right? Lots of different places we can pull information. But what are you putting into your mind? What kind of environment are you creating that's going to put you in a situation where you're going to see that growth? Who are you hanging around with?
Yeah.
These are some of the things. Go back to my my little quote about doing something you've never done before to become someone you've never been before. All right, well, maybe you've never made the decision to be hanging around the right people who can pull you up and not push you down. So those are all, it's all big choices we've got to make. And I still think it goes back to being able to just take a minute, hit pause, and think about the decisions we're making. Who are we hanging around with? What are we putting into our minds? And then when investing our time, because that's really what we're doing, with our time and money, two biggest things that we all think we need to do anything at all. And yet, how are we investing? Are we getting a return on those investments? In a lot of cases, it's a no. So you really got to think about what kind of investments you're making. Another piece of who you're going to become.
Yeah, and I like who the question that you just said and raised really for all of us, like who are you hanging around with? Who are you spending time with? You and I did a book earlier this year called Who Not How. Maybe it was last year, I can't remember when it was, but we did a book at one point where we talked about that who element, right? And it's important to understand the how, but who's around you?
Yeah.
And Barry, who do you think is the in your mind? All right, so we've not scripted this out here ahead of time, so we're having fun. Who do you think is the greatest basketball player of all time?
You gotta default to MJ. Some people are gonna
Yeah,
say LeBron, but
yeah,
I gotta stick with Jordan.
yeah. All right. So, and I didn't know you were going to answer that, but I would say Michael Jordan as well. Right. And I followed basketball a lot when I was growing up. Dr. J. I was a Dr. J fan, and then Jordan comes along. And Jordan says, I wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't for Dr. J, right? So, but
Yeah.
MJ, I think, is the greatest. And um, you think about it, right? So, 6 world championships, all right? They won it 6 times. And I don't know how many times he got the MVP, but 6 times. That's pretty significant. And I look at two things, two factors. He had a coach. It wasn't until Phil Jackson came onto the scene
Yeah.
that really taught him something and brought him together where he said, you know what? You've got to find a way to make your teammates better,
Yeah.
right? You've got to figure out a different way to do this. It's not you against everybody else. It's us. We're going to do this. If we're going to win, we're going to win together, right? Phil Jackson. And then what Jordan did was he raised the game of everybody else. You wouldn't know who Steve Kerr is. Now he's the coach of the Golden State Warriors. If it probably wasn't for Jordan or John Paxson or Scottie Pippen or, even Dennis Rodman. He was kind of flamboyant before then, but certainly he made a bigger impact once he joined the Bulls and was part
Yeah.
of that team. So Jordan found a way to make his teammates better around him.
Yeah.
And it's all about the who's on your team. And Jordan was the one who, he took pay cuts. He didn't chase the dollars.
Yeah.
He chased those like, all right, let's get the right environment around us. Let's win some championships. Now, I think that's pretty powerful. So I'll let you share your favorite Jordan element, but I want to share a quote with you in a minute. So that's from Jordan.
No, I mean, he was a guy, and listen, I had to suffer through watching them beat my Portland Trailblazers for the NBA championship. I was actually at the game when Jordan had that first quarter of what,
Oh,
six
wow.
threes,
Yeah.
and he just the way he looked back at the crowd, probably after hitting the fifth or sixth. But I remember the look on his face to this day. And then it was all, TV everywhere else, but just like, that's what I do. I just make us, it was just, it wasn't arrogant. It was just, that's what I do. And I think to me, that was just a testimony to his leadership and really commitment to those around him.
For sure.
I'm a big sports fan, that, and certainly my team doesn't always win. My college football team at the time of this recording, the Oregon Ducks, just took a beating here over the weekend. So you got to be humble, but you come back again next week. How do you get better? How do you get better? And if you can just focus on getting better, that's going to, again, we're talking about becoming more. Well, becoming more is not just about you. In my opinion, becoming more is about not only what you do for yourself, but what you do for others. Again, another John Maxwell, success is what we do for ourselves, what we achieve. Significance is what we do to help others achieve. And I think that's an element of becoming more as well. Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
He definitely helped others become more.
Yeah. And I want to go back a little bit earlier for Jordan, right? So down in my basement, my man cave, I've got a picture of Jordan hitting the game-winning shot against the Georgetown Hoyas in the NCAA championship. And just 3 years earlier from that scene of him hitting the shot, he gets cut from the basketball team in high school.
Yeah.
Think about that. He comes home. He doesn't make the varsity team. And his mom sees him moping around and she says, well, you better get back in there and do something about it. You have it. It's just whether or not you want it. Right? So he works his tail off to become something more in the course of a year and becomes one of the best high school basketball players in the state of North Carolina. And then gets recruited by North Carolina. And then there he is as a freshman hitting the game-winning shot against the Hoyas. So that was pretty cool. I love that. Dude,
so many stories like that, not just in the sports world, but in the business world and the world of, just life in general. I wish more people would look at those type of stories and be inspired by it. Not just look at it for the entertainment value, but let it be more inspirational, motivational. There's so much stuff to build on. But again, you and I, we've been able to, I'm not going to say we've been perfect or we've achieved all we want to achieve and become all we want to become. But I know for the last 10, 11 years, you and I have been putting ourselves in some pretty good environments and it's paid off. Great friends, great experiences. But it's a commitment to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to share this quote from Jordan. Have you seen The Last Dance? Where they
No,
talk about the last year of the Bulls, where they're together, Scotty and Michael, and
I have not seen that.
you. Okay, all right. Call to action for Barry and
Yes,
everybody else.
yes.
You got to go see that, right? So there's a great quote in there, and again, you're going to get a take of what it takes to become something more. Guys, you don't have to be Michael Jordan to become something more. All of us. This is the script. This is the script for all of us. This is the medication. If you're picking up something in the morning to say, okay, what do I need to take today? Become something more. Become something more. So Jordan, here's his quote. He says, as I go into situations that people don't know the outcome, I've already experienced them in my mind, just playing tricks with myself, so it didn't seem new to me. I wasn't afraid to fail. Once I began to understand the power, he's talking about the imagination, I became a master of the game of basketball. Michael Jordan. So this thing about becoming something more and allowing yourself to have a vision for what more you can be is so critical. So when we talk about the how and how to get there, and we talked about environment, part of the environment happens right in between the ears, guys.
Yeah.
You've got to have that environment set right too. What are you imagining? Because the narrative and the story that you may be telling yourself of why you can't, why you shouldn't, why you won't, that's going to limit you. Find that right story that says why you should, why you can, why you will. Step into that. And I think that, I mean, Einstein says it right. Imagination is a preview of life's coming attractions. So I just want folks to kind of realize and Barry, I'm going to let you kind of throw some thoughts on this. But this imagination part, imagine yourself, because that's where you and I were. Remember 11 years ago when we kind of
Yeah.
casted the vision of some stuff? And we really, and then you and I had a chance to go to Guatemala. That was somebody else's imagination saying, hey, I believe that we
Yeah.
can make an impact in another country. And 18,000 people were trained in 4 days' time, was it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to let you speak because I get down to this. I love it, right? I think we got to get that environment right.
Well, it's spot on, and it's so much been part of our journey, right? Together, we've seen so many examples of this. And to go back kind of the sports theme we've been picking on, how many athletes, including Jordan, when asked about their success in their respective sport, talk about that visualizing. Tiger Woods visualizes the shots. And if you could list, we could spend half an hour talking about athletes who've spoke into this. And to your point of, right between the ears, I think it's the same thing. When you start, and it's a process. You can't just you got to get yourself, again, not to just be redundant, but you got to get yourself into that environment. There's a process here, right? But you get to that point where you start thinking about becoming more. You've got to make that mental commitment. It's a mental shift to start really thinking about where you're investing your time, where you're investing your money, who you're hanging around with, all those things. So I know we don't have time to go way, way, way deep into this, but it's something you and I have heard 1,000 times. Trust the process. And I
Yeah.
think what we can do is a couple of guys who believe in people and believe in this idea of becoming more, is say, hey, we can help reduce some of that noise and clutter in your world and help you just take small steps forward. That's what it takes. I know, a lot of folks that I work with, they just get so overwhelmed because they're trying to follow that becoming more trail, and they're thinking about all the things they got to do to get there, all the things they got to do to get there. And I'm like, slow down, slow down. If you've made the commitment, awesome, but narrow it down 4 or 5 weeks. What's that going to look like? Most people have pretty good idea what they're doing for the next 5 weeks. So it's a lot easier to kind of manage that space rather than thinking about all the things you got to do over the next year. And that's where people get overwhelmed. Biggest challenge to anybody trying to become more is they get overwhelmed, set themselves up for failure at the front end, just thinking about everything that's got to happen. Slow down, small steps, compound, right? Darren Hardy, Compound Effect, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Great book.
Yeah.
It's just those small, consistent steps will get you there. But you got to take that first step, brother.
Take the first step. Take the first step. Yeah, so good. Right? Neil Armstrong, one small step for man,
It's spot on.
one giant step for mankind. Right? So take the small steps.
Yeah.
That's where it was. I mentioned earlier seeing a friend up in Arlington, and he's working out every day, small steps every day. But now look at where he's at. Jordan, um, greatest basketball player in the world. Was he born the greatest basketball player in the world? No. Heck, he didn't even make his varsity team when he was in high
Yeah.
school. Right? It's one small step. Keep taking those steps. So I want to share a formula with you, an observation. I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but this is something that I've observed. I just want to kick it at you and let you kind of share with me your thoughts on this. The future, right? Covey says start with the end in mind, and it can be overwhelming to think of the big, the future and where we want to get to. But if we remember there's no shortcuts to it, we just take the small steps. Here's what I've observed. The future is what we imagine, yes. So it's this imagination. It's about thinking, choosing a dream, right? What do we dream of? And then experimentation. It's kind of how you started, what you talked about at the very beginning of this, right? So it's not enough just to imagine what you want, but you've got to step forward with that and experiment. You've got to go explore and find out. It's about doing, designing the dream. And then I think it's about evaluation. It's going back and, okay, we did it. What did we learn from it? Evaluation is about assessing. And I think you got to stay integrous too.
Oh
So
yeah.
when I look at this formula, right, the future to me is imagination times experimentation times evaluation times integrity. And I believe the X part where I say times, the X factor is hope, that we've got to maintain that hope. We've got to maintain it. Otherwise, we're going to give up. And
Yeah.
to me, I think that's the life equation for all of us is that. But your thoughts on that?
No, I love that, and I think hope. We all know that the quotes around hope, and I think that's a beautiful thing because we need that, right? We need to believe that there is something more. We can feel it, but we really need to believe it, and I think
Yeah.
that's where that hope element comes in. Um, I think I love the way you put that together. For me, what popped into my mind is maybe an abbreviated version or the cliff notes on it. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge and evaluated experience is what will get you those results. But again, it's applied knowledge, taking action,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
think I love the way you've broken this down because they're important elements. But you got to start. It's that first step, and this is a great way. I love the way you're always doing stuff like this, right? Coming up with different ideas to look at things, and I love that about you because it challenges my own thinking.
Mm.
And I think, here we are back in environment again. Who are you spending your time with? I played a round of golf with a buddy of mine here just recently, and then afterwards we ended up talking for 4 hours, just challenging each other. It was like didn't have a plan to do that, but it's like got into a conversation where we could respect each other's thoughts, even though we disagreed on some stuff. But it's like, okay, challenge my thinking, and
Yeah.
and those type of conversations can be, real game changers in your life. So find those people, have those
Yeah.
people who are willing to respect you and your opinion. A good friend and mentor of ours, Scott Fay, used to say, believe what we believe, but think different thoughts,
Yeah.
right? And so you
Yeah.
can get that different perspective. Again, anybody knew anything about environment, it was Scott Fay, big landscaping guy. He gets it. He gets it.
So good. I love it. Yeah, and I love that part where you talked about the 4-hour conversation because when we share our experiences, then you have a thinking partner in the evaluation.
Yeah.
And when you have a thinking partner in evaluation, light bulbs go on. I know
Yeah.
you and we've had many of those moments where like boom, light bulb. And I'm hopeful and I believe this, that in the course, and it's happening today even, in the course of our conversations that we have, that other folks will see some of those light bulb moments, not the ones that we're having right there in that moment, and we are, but they'll have some for themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's so good. All right, boy, we could keep talking about this. So I think we need to land the plane. But I'm going to have you share your tip and challenge in just a minute. But first, I want to invite everybody to kind of visit us on the breakingaverage.com website. Come check it out. You can see all the podcasts. You can see some blogs that we have out there and other things, and links to other resources to help you become something more.
Yeah.
That's kind of a mission for us this year as we start season 5. This is our second episode. I did a solo one just to kind of get you started. You've heard me use the word imagine, and I think that's a powerful area as far as environment. Get your imagination right. What can you do there? And we've got so many great examples of. Barry talked about how Tiger Woods visualizes, right? Visualize your life. Visualize the things that you know that you can be, right? Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Compare yourself to who you can be.
Mm.
And that'll make a huge difference. Again, visit us at breakingaverage.com. So, Barry, tip and challenge. So, what we like to do, and again, I'm so glad you're part of this, sitting with me in a co host seat here. But what we like to do to end this is just share a tip and a challenge for everybody else. So as we've talked this morning and recorded this podcast, what is a tip or challenge that you want to offer everybody else?
Yeah, I think I kind of gave a little teaser of it here a few minutes ago. But the tip is really to simplify. Like you mentioned, Covey, start with the end in mind. There's nothing wrong with that. The better vision you can have of where you want to be a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, the better off you are in executing on that. But the key is to not get focused on those elements. So the tip is really simplify it, figure out what you want to do in the next 5 weeks, right? Just
Mm,
just just bring it down to 5 weeks. What do you need to do over the 5 weeks? And the challenge is, okay, set a goal for 5 weeks. But if you look at whatever goal you have for yourself, just pick one. When we try and do everything, we get nothing done, right? You
yeah,
can't do everything all at once. We can't multitask. At least guys can't. Women, I'm not convinced. I think they have that skill set. But guys, no. We got to focus on something. Get intentional about it. Um, Pick a
yeah,
goal. Pick a 5 week goal. Here's your challenge. Pick a 5 week goal.
yeah.
Focus on that and get it done. It doesn't have to be huge, but I think 5 weeks is enough time to do something of significance. Whatever that is. Put this to the test. Look, I've been living this. I've been a product of my own product. I've seen this work. I've hosted hundreds of calls and had thousands of conversations,
Yeah.
and people get overwhelmed so easy, and then it just ends. What do? We get paralyzed.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not working. Give it a shot. Give
Give
it
it
a
a
shot.
shot.
Give yourself a 5 week goal and go achieve it.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's important. Um, I'm gonna build off that. So thank you for that tip and challenge. And guys, I want to encourage you with that, right? Barry said, "Hey, look, give yourself 5 weeks. Go out there. What is it? What's the minimal viable?" Is a phrase we use in our industry. What's the minimal viable thing that you can do? Again, I mentioned my friend up in Arlington. He says, just start. The way to get to the finish is to start. You got to just start, and sometimes you wake up not wanting to, but if you just get going, boy, you get started. Napoleon Hill, Barry, has a great quote I love. He says, desire is the starting point of all achievement.
Yeah.
And I would ask folks, what is it that you really desire? And follow Barry's advice. What's the one thing that you can do to achieve that desire? Get started. See yourself as achieving it. And if you need some encouragement, look how far you've already come. Look back. Barry and I are not the same folks we were 11 years ago when we met. We've grown a little bit and we still got some growing to go. And I think the same is true for you too. Just look back. Think about how Jordan, 3 years earlier from winning that game-winning shot against the Hoyas, he didn't even make the basketball team. Look how far he grew. And then from there, look how far he grew. Look, I know you're not Michael Jordan. None of us are. But we can learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
and let's just step forward with what it is that we desire. Find that minimal viable. Make just improve a little bit. And if it also helps, tell your friends about some of the achievements that you have. I know we're not braggadocious and we're afraid to do that, right? But I think people will encourage you if you say, "Hey, look, I just achieved something. It may be small, but it was big for me. I got this done. It was one small step for mankind, but one big step for me." Do that. Find it, share it, and let others just kind of speak life into you. And I think you'll be encouraged by that. So, Barry, any last thoughts as we close this out?
No, I love bringing Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich into this, talking about desire. And what popped into my mind is, how many times have either one of us asked somebody, what do you want?
Mm,
And what's the typical response? Well, what I don't want is,
yeah,
and it's like, "Yeah, but what do you want?" Well, what I don't want is, and we both know this, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And when people are focusing on what they don't want, guess what they get? What they
yeah,
don't want.
that's right.
So take that idea of desire from Napoleon Hill and get clear on what you want, right? I mean, again, clarity on that is good. Then maybe take a 5-week action step there. But I love kind of wrapping this up in desire, because who do you want to become? I think that's the real question, of the day. Who do you want to become? Now grow into that person.
So good. Well, guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Breaking Average podcast. We are so excited that you're here. Barry and Glenn, again, thank you for being a part of this discussion this morning as we carry on. We ask that you guys just join us for the next episode of the Breaking Average podcast. Barry, we're going to talk about something called the reticular activating system next time. So it's going to be fun. So we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Breaking Average podcast. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe. All opinions and comments expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or views of any of the advertisers, producers, or platforms. This show was produced by R Squared Multimedia. A special thank you to Milestones Melodies for our theme music. As you continue your day, what is one action that you can apply from this podcast to your life? Tune in for our next episode as we continue to challenge everyone to break average.